On a beautiful sunny day in mid-April, members from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in conjunction with the Red Cross of East Tennessee, joined forces in an effort to help the Knoxville community. This large-scale project took months of planning.
Elder Gonzalez of the 70 used to serve in South America, and they had a day of service that was tremendously successful on two fronts. One, in getting the members out and doing something in the community. And number two, and perhaps just as importantly, is getting people in the community to recognize that the LDS Church was just not self-serving. We're often kind of this little clique of people who take care of our own, but maybe no one else. And so he had this idea of, if we have a day of service where we're out serving in a large way across the entire country, then perhaps we can have a positive impact in the community.
I was designated by the stake presidency to be the committee chairman for the planning of our stake project. We were told back in the early fall about this project coming, and we didn't get a lot of details, but basically we were told that we could, that each stake would do something differently.
But we sat there and kind of scratched our heads and thought, now what would we do and what could we do as a day of service that would involve our members appropriately and also help us to forge some bonds of friendship in the community?
Well, initially, after we'd had several meetings of the Knoxville stake, we started talking to Shelby Ford in the Knox-Cumberland stake and realized that she was talking to the same people some of the same people that we were talking to. And we thought it's kind of ludicrous that we're not working together. And of course, the stake president started talking, and so we decided that we would get together and talk about what did she come up with and what did we come up with. And it only makes sense because the city's only divided by a boundary that we've made, not by any real boundary. And perhaps that's been one of the best outcomes of the entire project, that our stakes work together, and our stakes, which 12 or 13 years ago were the same stake, are now kind of getting reacquainted with each other and had this opportunity to serve together. So I think that was a phenomenal outcome, and that we hope will continue long after this project.
We started to call a number of agencies that we had just brainstormed about. We called the Red Cross, we called a number of other groups.
We weren't sure exactly what type of service project we wanted to do, but we thought we might want to do something relating to disaster preparedness.
But as we started to approach these groups, what we found is most of them are small operations. All they could provide was something that might use about 5 or 10 people. Well, we knew that we had somewhere around 300 to 500 people that we could provide just from our stake, and so that was a little much for any of these other agencies. Well, when we approached the Red Cross, they came back with an idea that sounded promising.
He said, is there a project that you have an idea about for 500 volunteers to participate in and you have a need for? One thing we had talked about was spreading preparedness materials in our communities that are affected by single-family fires.
And as it turns out, it was a wonderful opportunity to reach out to our community and to work with other agencies.
I went and spoke to the fire department and was asking them what areas they felt had a higher need for preparedness materials, and they came back and told me this 37914 zip code was an area where we had a lot of fires.
And as we talked about it a little bit more, we found that, wow, this is something that we could do that would benefit the community, but also something that would require several hundred people.
We would never have been able to distribute those 9,000 brochures to those specific homes without those 500 volunteers from the Latter-day Saints Church. If we would have had to do it, we would have been thinking about mass media distributions, and that may not have necessarily hit those particular people. If they didn't buy a newspaper or they didn't watch the television, they would never have gotten the materials. But having the Latter-day Saints volunteers be able to distribute that door to door, we know that they got it. Even if they open it up and read it, if they just open it up to say, and they see the thing about single-family fires, and do you have a smoke detector, we may have saved a life.
As the volunteers arrived, they were assigned to a team at the registration desk. Each team had a leader and a ham radio operator who could communicate with home base.
The idea of having the ham operators act as if this were an emergency, and we had teams out doing something other than just passing out handbooks. And so there was a ham operator with every team, and then they had a, kind of a headquarters operation where we were all, as we were passing out the handbooks or or setting things up that would communicate with the teams. How are you doing? Are there any problems?
That was wonderful because it helped with safety. It helped relay information back and forth. For instance, if some groups ran out of the materials, they could, say, hey, we need, more information, and they were able to get the information back. It was just great real-life training. Many of the ham radio operators, have their licenses but don't have the real, they talk on the nets and things, but they didn't have just real-life experience. So it was great to help our members that way, too, become more prepared for an emergency. And it was wonderful to reach out and to serve with the other ham radio operators in our community.